Hey everybody, happy holidays. My name is Ray Flook. I am television beat writer for Bleeding Cool, and you are here for our next recap of Happy Season 1. We're going to be taking a look at Episode 3, When Christmas Was Christmas. Again, we first two episodes, we've really gotten a lot of setup. We've gotten to a point where now Happy and Sax are on the same page. So, of course, third episode, they're just going to hit the ground running, right? Absolutely. But what we get in this episode is a lot of flashback. We get a lot of backstory. We get a lot of reasoning behind why things are the way they are with Sax, with Amanda, with McCarthy, and how everything kind of got to be where they are. And it's important because it's not just we're going to give you a bunch of backstory because we want to get you up to speed. It's how important in this episode the backstory really reflects upon what's going now in the current time. So we're going to jump right in. We start with a flashback, and again, I have my handy-dandy trusty notes right here, just to make sure that I stay on point on what you guys coming at me later on. But we begin with a flashback, and we see Sax and McCarthy, and this was actually the preview clip that was sent, that Syfy had sent earlier in the week. But essentially, it's Sax and McCarthy rolling up to the apartment, a side apartment that this scumbag, drugged-out lawyer, mobbed-up connected lawyer, has for his girlfriend and for their child. He's drugged. He's out of his mind. Apparently, there's just been a long history of consistent abuse on the girlfriend, and we're going to assume the child. So Sax rolls in. Of course, the lawyer, being drugged up and all full of himself, needs to remind Sax, you know, I'm connected, and you have no idea who I'm connected with, and everything else. And that leads to one of the 5 great quotes that I'll be talking about at the end of this recap that Sax hits him with. But you can see in this moment that Sax is doing everything possible to just keep his stuff reined in that moment. He realizes the big picture. That doesn't mean it's not burning him inside. This idea of the difference between enforcing law and enforcing justice. And I think we're starting to see now how those two worlds in Sax's mind just they can't coexist. Not in the city, not in the world that he inhabits in law enforcement. So we get that scene, and then we cut to the now. And we see Happy and we see Sax, and we see that they are on the same page. They're going to start moving forward. Here's the only problem. Happy has no idea where Hailey's being kept. He does, however, have an idea of how Very Bad Santa looks. So they are going to go and visit Sax's friend Emil, who is a sketch artist, who is no longer a sketch artist for the police department for some undetermined reasons. We've been told up to this point. We've gotten some semblance and some points of it, but I have a feeling that story either may come out in a little more detail, or maybe it's best that we don't know it. But we get now a picture of Santa. We get that moving forward, and as that is going along, we get a flash to what we've already pretty much established at this point, is that Sax and McCarthy had been having sex for a while. They've been having a big affair, but it's interesting because you get the sense in the evidence room that with Sax, McCarthy is just an outlet for him, for everything that he's dealing with, for everything he's processing, for everything he's keeping in. Not so much that he's in love with her, or even that it's some big lust. It just seems like McCarthy is just sort of some bigger component. There's still more depth, I feel like, between Sax and Amanda, even in the flashbacks, than with McCarthy. But I think, again, it's the idea of Sax running away from the bad guys because he doesn't want to confront the bad guys. Something Happy had talked about in a previous episode. So I'm going to get dime store psychiatric there for you for a second. So from that flashback, we now cut to McCarthy and to Amanda. And for those of you who don't know, Amanda's in prison because that's what happens when you punch a police officer. But thankfully, McCarthy is there. Whatever else is going on, there's still a missing girl. You know, there's still a missing little girl. It's still Amanda's missing little girl. So McCarthy and Amanda decide that they are going to start doing their own investigation. And McCarthy gives Amanda a very interesting piece of information. That Very Bad Santa leaves a calling card as the one Amanda got, which is a Christmas card. Now they're going to go visit a family whose child was recently abducted, who haven't gotten a card yet. So they're going to try and see if they can get some information from the parents while everything is still pretty fresh. Okay, now at this point, we've got Happy, we've got Sax. They're ready to cruise, they're ready to roll because they've got a sketch, they know where they need to go. And yeah, here's the problem. Sax kind of sucks at driving. I feel like the creators of the show and whoever's doing the effects and cinematography are just having a field day with showing all the different ways that Sax can just F up a car. But wow, does he do it just beautifully and poetically again in this week's episode. But I digress. Sax finds his way to his hooker contact from the first episode. Again, it's just we go from a SpongeBob SquarePants type thing, which you guys know if you've seen, and then this episode it was a Shining, I guess, nod. So that kind of odd. But his contact gives him a heads up about, hell, if you're going to go and look for Santa, where else are you going to find Santa except the North Pole? Of course, in this world of, again, Grant Morrison and Derek Robertson, it's not just the North Pole. North Pole is actually the name of a strip club where all the department store mall Santas and everybody else go to kind of just burn away all that Christmas cheer, I guess, for lack of a better phrase. So off to the strip club. I'm sure Sax probably knows where it's at. So now we cut to Very Bad Santa and Hailey, and we see at this point that Very Bad Santa is just really making sure that he has full control over Hailey. He divulges to her by doing the little boy voice that he was the one who's gotten all the information from her throughout her time inside that crate, which means he knows about Sax, he knows about her feelings about him being the hero, about how he's going to save her. So of course, in Very Bad Santa's mind, I want to meet this dude because if I'm going to control her, I'm going to break her hero down. And that's the mindset right there. Doesn't help that the scumbag ends up, first off, if you don't like fruitcake, this scene is not going to make you like fruitcake even more. The fact that he drugs a fruitcake and gets Hailey's head screwed up to the point where we see a scene where in her mind and her memories, he's now a part of her mind and memories of her dad. That's how just disgustingly sick. The implications of it are even more disturbing, but I don't think those implications are really what they're trying to go for. But it was disturbing on a number of levels. That really actually surprisingly got to me more than I expected. So now, of course, we now cut back to Amanda and to McCarthy. And as I was saying before, they're starting their own investigation, and they're going to meet with this family whose child is missing. And Amanda has this heartbreaking one-on-one with them. And she needs to essentially pull herself together, and she goes into a bathroom, and then she finds her way, interestingly enough, into the missing girl's room, and looking through her room to see if she can find some clues or something like that may coincide with what happened to Hailey. She finds kind of a crawl space opening area in the closet that leads to stairs going up into the attic. And lo and behold, what I was not expecting is we go upstairs and we find out that couple's little girl, she's upstairs. She's been upstairs the whole time. It's some Munchausen by proxy thing where the parents were getting off on the attention and adulation and everything else they were getting from being the parents of a missing child. They essentially abducted their own child. So, yeah, it from Amanda's standpoint, it was a heavy thing to see. And I think McCarthy kind of alludes to that, which is like, have you seen enough now? But Amanda is still missing her kid. That's a lot to take. But I think you see the resolve in Amanda where it's like, that's not me and that's not my child. My child is still missing and I need to get her back. So that was an interesting aside. I think it gave everybody an understanding of, as loving parents as you may think people are, you never know the deep, dark sins they have going on, in the closet, or I should say, up in the attic. So very, very effective scene. We now get to a flashback scene with Nick and with McCarthy and with Amanda, and it takes place at the police station. And Amanda comes by to visit because Amanda has just found out that she is pregnant with Hailey, and she's trying to find the right opportunity to tell Sax. Now, Amanda doesn't realize that Sax has had the kind of day he's had, and I'll get to that in a minute. He doesn't realize he's had the kind of day he has. She's trying to find the right opportunity to tell her that they're expecting a child, especially with all the hardships and the distance and disconnect they've had. The reason why I emphasize that Sax and the day he had and her not being aware is we see the other shoe drop for the flashback that we saw in the beginning of this episode. They're called back to the apartment because of noises and violence complaints, and Nick and McCarthy get in there, and we see that he's killed his girlfriend, for lack of a better phrase. He's drugged out of his mind, and the most disturbing thing we see, without seeing it, but the implication and the sound of it, is that he'd put the baby in the microwave. Good luck trying to get the sound of the microwave out of your head after you watch that episode. And Sax ends up acting out in a manner in which I think every one of us rightfully would want to when we see that scene. He takes that guy outside. He beats him down outside. And for those of you who have ever seen American History X with Edward Norton, you will understand exactly what happens to this guy, except instead of a boot, Saxe uses his hand repeatedly over and over again to curb this guy. Again, justice versus law enforcement. Saxe is going to pay a heavy, heavy price for that. But Saxe also did what he thought was just in honor of the horrific things that were done to that woman and were done to that child. So we see now where that break with Saxe is, his inability to reconcile those two worlds. So we get back now to a end of the flashback at Saxe and Amanda at home, and we see Amanda telling Saxe and referencing about putting another stocking on the chimney, and he's only thinking about everything he's seen. He comes at her as if having a child is horrible, would never want to have a child together with them, why would you ever want to do it? That's how she sees it. In his mind, he sees himself as weak and faulting. Like, why would there ever be a good thing from a child that comes from him? And even if the child is decent, what kind of world would he be bringing them into when you see situations like this happen? And Saxe knows full well, in the end, the bad guys are going to win. Bad guys are going to win. He's going to deal with the repercussions of this. Big time from it. So we see that big divide. But sadly, the big divide doesn't come from two people who don't know each other. It comes from two people who just got to hard times in their lives and just lost the ability to communicate with one another. And that's the most heartbreaking thing about this. Okay, we cut now to the strip club, the North Pole, which finally, after spending a lot of time there and Happy being excited about the fact you get free cherries, which I thought was a hysterical line, Saxe get a chance to sit down with Mrs. Claus. And Mrs. Claus breaks down the whole story about Very Bad Santa, at least potentially for Very Bad Santa. That Very Bad Santa is most likely the son, offspring, of a Santa Claus who used to work the city's department and mall Santa circuit until accusations and comments regarding his touching of children and how he's very inappropriate children eventually led to his suicide. So we're left with the impression that the son may be following in the steps of the dad, but elevating it to a new level. I think that's most likely the story they're going to be going with. But again, I think there is an extra element we've seen, both with the opening of his cloak we saw, and the discussion again that Mikey had about demons and everything else. So I think we're readying ourselves for something even bigger and badder than that. So now we've got that going on. We now cut to Hailey and to Very Bad Santa, who now has all the information he needs, and he's going to go do a little visiting because he now knows what Saxe looks like. And that's where we get the very end of the episode, which is outside of the North Pole in the alley. Very Bad Santa attacks and just beats the living crap out of Saxe. Now, I'm cutting Saxe some slack. He was also swinging some big-time stuff to kind of, quote-unquote, take the edge off earlier. But he gets beaten down pretty bad. That's the only excuse I can give, because considering how many people he's taken down up until then, the element of surprise and being weakened, I think that's kind of what did it. Feel like Saxe needs his kind of like drug and alcohol like can of spinach like Popeye. But even more so, and I'll talk about this in the quotes that we're going to be talking about in a minute, it's the final line that Very Bad Santa hits Happy with. And again, I won't completely spoil this for you, but let's just say Very Bad Santa has a very, very odd and weird and strange diet, for lack of a better phrase. So yeah, that gets us through episode 3. We're going to be taking a look at Year of the Horse. We're going to be doing a live blog tonight. This is Wednesday when you're going to be seeing this. So later on tonight, we're going to be doing a live blog of Year of the Horse, which is the 4th episode of Happy. We're going to be unofficially on at 9 p.m., but we will formally be on at 10 p.m. for our live blog. Please make sure you join us. Go to bleedingcool.com, and you'll be able to check out the live blog landing site that's going to go live at 9 p.m., and we'll have some cool pre-stuff to go up there to kind of lead you to it, and I'll put a ton of social media out for you to see it. So I think that'd be great. Make sure you guys join me tonight. Also, our quotes. Our quotes for today are, we're going to go with kind of a couples dance. 2 from Saxe, 2 from Amanda, and then a very special one that kind of drives the point home for what we're going to be seeing tonight. So from Saxe, we've got, there's a lot of things people never told me. Then again, I was never much of a listener. And again, especially towards the ending of the episode, we see how important that is. And also, I'm someone you don't want to be associated with, a line he throws out at the lawyer in the very beginning when the lawyer is trying to power name drop his ability to take Saxe's badge anytime he wants. That's not gonna, he tries it, he'll be pulling back a hand with like 4 fingers missing at least. Moving on to Amanda, there's a comment Amanda made to McCarthy early on. You're no mother. If you were a mother, I'd know it. And that just, again, we're going to see that there's going to be some, I believe, some level of reconciliation or some understanding between the two. But at that moment and that time, no, that was a knife under the armor at McCarthy. Her next line from Andrea is actually to Sachs, which is, never time to talk, never time for us. And it's the age-old adage of what broke them up. It's what drove him to McCarthy, which could have driven him to anybody else. It's this idea of just Sachs' obsessiveness that drove everybody who he ever cared about away, especially Amanda. But our last quote comes from Very Bad Santa at the very end, as he is deciding on a sudden, last-minute, horned blue snack. Just before that moment, he looks at Happy and says, "I can see you." And with that, we see you in the preview. That leads us to this week's episode. So thank you guys for joining me. Hope you enjoyed the recap. If you got any comments or anything, please make sure you put them below. Also, hit me up on social media. Again, we're going to be doing the live blog at Happy tonight. Unofficially 9 p.m., officially 10 p.m. New lips, new mouth, new vocal cords. Just kind of still working on them. But thank you guys for joining me so far. Hope you can join me tonight. Hope you guys are having great holidays, enjoying the hell out of them. Got really cool stuff, enjoying friends, family, and everything, and people are driving you crazy and travel isn't so bad. Enjoy, guys. I will see you later on tonight.